Twilight Princess. As some of you already know, my favourite Zelda game, and potentially even my favourite game of all time. And with this series getting deeper, today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favourite songs in The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Before we start, as always, I would like to welcome you to my channel. Despite being a small streamer, you guys have been supporting me so well, and as a result, the Kaiiiba Clan has continued to grow, which I cannot thank you enough for. Furthermore, my YouTube content has been improving, and has become something that I really enjoy doing. If you are new here and enjoy my content, why not subscribe? It's free and will ensure you don't miss any future content. If you really want to get involved, consider joining my Discord and my Twitch. The links are below. Here you can get access to exclusive updates, as well as join me on my streams. I play a wide range of games and I love to have a laugh, so what is there to lose? With all that out the way, let's talk about the OST from my favourite Zelda game, Twilight Princess. At the time, The Wind Waker wasn't particularly well received, as many Zelda fans wanted a more realistic approach to Zelda with the new hardware of the Nintendo GameCube. With this in mind, the next installment in the series would take a drastic change in order to give the fans what they'd been asking for. This was the birth of Twilight Princess. Koji Kondo, who worked on all previous 3D Zelda titles, would now return as the sound supervisor for Twilight Princess, with Toru Migenishi returning again after The Wind Waker, and a new member of the team, Asuka Ota. It is known that Koji Kondo originally looked at using an orchestra for the game's soundtrack, but due to its slow development and lack of time, he opted for sequenced music, which he added would complement the game, as orchestral music can sometimes provide lack of interactivity. The overall tone change in Twilight Princess would mean that the soundtrack would no longer be whimsical. In fact, it would be much more dark, melancholic, and very atmospheric. Although this is not to say that there are some tracks in the game that clearly don't fit this style at all. Twilight Princess is my favourite Zelda title, so I might be a little biased here. But originally the fans also adored this title, which I think is actually a result of the dislike for The Wind Waker at the time. But unlike Wind Waker, which become beloved by all over time, Twilight Princess became a big debate in the Zelda community. A split between hardcore fans like me who put it on a pedestal, and other fans who say the game was very overrated. But I'd like to think we can all find a common ground in the soundtrack. From even the first opening track, the music in Twilight Princess is grand, full of emotion and feeling. It all fits so perfect and interacts so well with its environment, which makes it really excel, especially as the game is very atmospheric. I would say Majora's Mask has a lot of similarities in the sense that the music was atmospheric and dark, although with the new hardware, Nintendo were now ready to make something utterly special. This soundtrack is by far one of my most favourite soundtracks ever. I love the dark tone, I love the way multiple instruments are implemented, and I love the fact that it all comes together so well. One thing that I also find interesting is how there is clearly inspiration from each of the previous 3D Zelda titles that came before the game, which is just really cool. As I've previously mentioned, the further into this series I get, the harder it has become to make these lists, and I think this will be the very peak for me. I love every song in this game, and I will die on the hill that there is no bad song in Twilight Princess. My top 10 songs in this list could even be questioned by some of you, and well, even myself, as I believe that there are some incredible songs that deserve to make the list that miss it so narrowly. As always, I'd like to remind you that this is my opinion, so if your favourite songs aren't on my list, it's highly likely that I love them just as much, but they just missed it ever so slightly. Please let me know in the comments below if you agree with any of my picks, or if there's any that would be in your top 10. It really interests me to find out what songs impacted you the most. And with that being said, let's take a listen to my top 10 favourite songs in Twilight Princess. Number 10. Ilia's theme. What a way to start a top 10 list. Ilia's theme has to be one of the most emotional themes in the entire Zelda series. I find it to fit two entirely different moods. The first being that the song is incredibly soothing. This is potentially due to the sound of the marimba giving it a childlike feeling. The tone is so soft and gentle. The rhythm is calming and almost heaven-like. The way the retreating notes go from high to low pitch gives us this content feeling of home and peace. The flute pairs so well with this and almost elevates us further. I'd like to note that with Ilia's love for horses, and particularly Epona, this song is incredibly similar to Epona's theme, and even Lon Lon Ranch in Ocarina of Time. Note Malon singing. The second vibe is much more melancholic, depending on the timing of the game that you hear the song in, it can feel very different. The song is, as I mentioned previously, so emotional, but it has the ability to work in both ways. It's a simple track, but I think this is a compliment to the composers, as it does work in both tones. If you look at it in more of a melancholic way, the end of the track almost sounds like it builds up to reassure us that everything will be okay, which I previously spoke about with Lon Lon Ranch in my Ocarina of Time top 10. To start the list with this song just proves that the soundtrack in Twilight Princess is legendary. Number 9. Hidden Village. The next entry is completely different, but it also delivers to the same high standard. Imagine you're playing a Zelda game, but then you're suddenly thrown into the Wild West. With that in mind, welcome to the Hidden Village. This entire area of the game is very unique, and it's further amplified by the incredible soundtrack that comes with it. When you enter the village, it appears to be abandoned. The whistling sound, which is also isolated, gives us the perfect sense that there is something more to this place. Suddenly, the guitar kicks in, with a very speedy rhythm, which is just brilliant and so fitting, as we discover the village is infested with bubblings. As you start clearing the village, the music picks up, and gives off this perfect feeling of being in a western. But it's not done yet. The further you go in, the more the music builds up with different instruments and rhythms. The grand moment is when it all builds up to include the trumpets playing the main tune. I absolutely love this area, and a large percentage of that comes from the music itself. It makes you feel like a true hero fighting off evil that remains in this small abandoned town. It's so unique and really stands out from any soundtrack in the entire Zelda series, which gives it number 9 on my list. Number 8. Hyrule Field. If you asked me to describe the feeling of an epic adventure with a song, then this would definitely be my pick. The way the song is introduced by the sound of many instruments together before breaking into a fast beat that is accompanied by a catchy tune will always remain in my head. The use of different instruments playing the same series of notes is incredible, and it works so well. Riding on the back of Epona whilst this music plays is a feeling I think every gamer should experience at least once. The song makes us feel like we are the true hero going out into the world to save the day. The song eventually breaks into a more dull segment where it makes us aware that Hyrule Field is a dangerous place and that we should proceed with caution. I love this, as it blends in so well when we're faced with enemies. The song then slows even more, as all the instruments come together to play the main rhythm, but in a lower tone. All I can say is that this hits right. We are once again hit with a segment of the song where it's darker, but this time it's more menacing, reinforcing the dangers out in this world that is a force to be reckoned with. I will always love this version of Hyrule Field, and it continues to take me back to when I was a child playing this game, discovering all of its secrets. Number 7. Gerudo Desert. I really feel like I'm in the desert with this one. The instruments used are representative of a Middle Eastern style song. The beat has a few different percussion instruments that bring it all together, and when paired with the guitar, we have something that fits the area so well. The Gerudo Desert in Twilight Princess is a very barren and forgotten about place, despite it being very influential and a place where the sages were in the past. This makes the low tone of singing feel even greater and more divine, as we feel the presence of its past is still very much in the present atmosphere. The other instruments kick in with some kind of wind instrument that is just so well placed, furthering the feeling of being in a desert. I always love returning to this area of the game, and even went on to learn how to play the guitar riff, as it's just so cool. Similarly to the Hyrule Field theme, this track creates the perfect sense of adventure, but in a completely different environment, and its uniqueness to other Gerudo Desert themes make it a special one to remember. Number 6. City in the Sky. Once again another soundtrack from Twilight Princess where the song fits so seamlessly well with the area that it's set in. After being literally shot by a cannon into the sky, we land in one of the final dungeons in the game, City in the Sky. It's so unusual and odd, although very enchanting and breathtaking. As the music sets in, straight away the soothing soft rhythm comprising of different synths kick in, which give us a heavenly feeling. A very unusual flute plays a small tune that echoes off into the distance, giving us a feeling of abandonment, which in a way seems to be the case. The soundtrack is very simple and doesn't have much more to it, but I have to talk about the weird chattering sounds that play very quietly every so often in a random and overlapping way. This is so strange, and when you think about it, this entire area of the game is pretty strange. I don't know what it is that makes me love this soundtrack so much. I think it's down to its simplicity and atmospheric feeling. If you take a moment to close your eyes and just listen to this song, you might understand what I mean. It certainly isn't the only time where simplicity in a song from the Zelda series makes it so good, and it certainly won't be the last. Number 5. Midna's Lament. I can already sense the amount of comments I'm going to get asking me why on earth this song didn't make number 1. I'll start off by saying I'm sorry, and I'll continue to say that this song could have been number 1 very easily, although the reason it isn't is because I listen to other songs more often than this, so it seemed odd not to place those slightly above it. Midna's Lament is beautiful in every single way. It is at this point in the game where we're hit with a brick wall head on. Midna, who has been our companion, leading the way and helping us on our adventure, is in critical condition and needs our help. Despite everything else in the game going on, she is an absolute priority, and this whole moment is perfect. The song is so melancholic and heartbreaking. I'll never forget the emotions I felt the first time experiencing this all at once. There aren't many instruments used in this song, and that adds more to it. The piano is just so perfect. The rhythm that repeats itself while other melodies are played over the top of it is just on a different level. The song really makes us feel weak, and that Midna is in need of us in this sad time. The way the music picks up and plays a different melody gives us hope that we can save her if we just keep pushing on. What amplifies this song even more is that it plays no matter where you are in Hyrule during this segment. This once again reiterates the urgency and importance of the situation. This song is perfect, and I would even say it's the best song in Twilight Princess, maybe even in Zelda, and I have to admit, I still feel guilty for having it at number 5, not number 1. But I will end off by saying that this piece of music is a timeless masterpiece. Number 4. Lakebed Temple. As you delve deep underwater into the Lakebed Temple, you suddenly hear the sound of something crashing, but it's muffled and sounds like it's deeply submerged. There's a melody, followed by this odd blowing sound that is very low pitched, which once again sounds submerged, accompanied by the sound of a godly chant, and a higher pitched whistling sound. If I had to describe this track with one word, I would say ambience. It's simple, but very atmospheric, and it really drives home to us that we're deep underwater, in an abandoned place which the Zora used to inhabit. There is then a sound that is almost like a clock ticking, in an unusual tone, which makes the place seem more confusing and puzzling. I really love this track because it is just ambience rather than a full song or theme. This is a song I can listen to whilst trying to sleep. Call me unusual, but something about this ambience is somewhat calming to me. Although I feel like if you have a fear of the depths, this might not be for you. I find it fascinating how well this track conveys the feeling of being deep underwater, in a place that is abandoned and full of secrets. Even now in my adult life, if I'm underwater, this song plays in the back of my mind. The sheer impact of the ambience fitting a scene so well is what gives this song number 4 on my list. Number 3. Twilight. Once again, another soundtrack that really plays on ambience. The opening of the song feels like we've entered some kind of portal, which is pretty much the case. We are somewhere that is shaded in darkness, mystery and horrors. There is a whistling sound that is very high pitched, and gets lower and lower before fading out, and leading into a sound that is incredibly ambient and almost magical. I feel like this is supposed to be the light side of the Twilight. Throughout, there is a synth playing a fast unnerving rhythm that makes us feel very uncomfortable, like we're being followed or watched. The bells feel so out of place, which continues to add to the unusual vibe of this track. The light sounding synth then disappears and the tone becomes much darker, as there is a very distorted, menacing synth that plays. It sounds like something ripped straight from a horror film. It's pure ambience at its best, and the song isn't completely terrifying at face value, but as you listen, when you're exploring the Twilight, your senses feel heightened, and you almost start to question yourself as if you're alone or not. Next time you're out very late at night, and you're completely alone, listen to this song. You'll see exactly what I mean. Things feel out of place, and it feels like there's some sort of presence. Just like the Lakebed Temple, this song is so far up my list because it achieves greatness with just ambience. Number 2. Arbiter's Grounds. Let's take the last 2 entries and turn it up an entire notch. Arbiter's Grounds is simply grim. It was once a prison and execution chamber for the most evil people in the whole of Hyrule, and it was used by the sages to rid them of the world. After many years, Arbiter's grounds became abandoned and taken over by all the dark souls that were left to roam, and here we're greeted with yet again a soundtrack that is completely based on Ambience. As we enter, we're greeted with a very evil sounding growl, almost like a warning that we should not be here. This is then followed by a beat that plays through the entire soundtrack. Throughout, there is a low devil-like growling, as well as a higher pitched moaning, almost like there are lost spirits here that are trapped to suffer for all eternity. Occasionally we hear a tapping sound, which can actually catch you off guard and make you feel as something is lurking in the dimly lit halls of the grounds. There is a string instrument that plays a falling tune, which fits again with the Middle Eastern themes of this area of the game, but it also continues to make us feel very uneasy. There's more higher pitched moaning which slowly fades away, which is completely fear-inducing. It's yet again another example of ambience and how incredibly well it can be used to create a vibe in a game that's so horrific and unsettling. Twilight Princess is a very dark game, and it's tracks like this that make it excel in this area. This is a haunting song which I'll never forget, no matter how hard I try. For me, this is the best example of how ambience can be used to set the scene in any Zelda title. Number 1. Zant Battle Theme. Zant is one of my favourite characters in the whole of Zelda, and after such a big build up we're given one of the best Zelda bosses in the entire franchise. The start fights with a low jarring piano tone that really highlights how dark Zant is. This is then followed by the forever terrifying Zant scream, as a beat then begins to build up. The song has such an evil feeling to it, and slowly builds up to include more instruments and rhythms that you will recognise from other parts of the game. Eventually, the sound of being transported through a Twilight portal plays, and you start to hear the rhythm of Morpheal, which is slightly slower and lower in pitch. As it goes on in this section, there is a very horrible distorting sound that starts to play. The fight is very smart, and a way to essentially have a boss rush. This idea continues throughout, but it becomes more crazy and sporadic as it goes on, which really complements Zant's nature perfectly. We then hear the teleport sound again, but this time Ook's theme plays. It's much faster and has many remixes, which adds to the unworldly distorted feeling. I actually love this part so much, and get such a rush when it plays. It once again complements Zant's unpredictable nature. The whole vibe is so perfect. Despite adopting many styles, I just can't help but admire this soundtrack for how well it's all merged into one. The song then uses the teleport sound and suddenly the Blizzetta theme fades in, but it's much more distorted and sounds out of tune. This is accompanied by a godly type singing that highlights the powers of Zant. In the final phase, the song picks up some incredible speed and mixes all different elements of each section into one. It continues to get faster and faster to the very climax where Zant is defeated. Having so many soundtracks that are S tier into one thing is just unreal. It's so dark and unusual, I don't even know how they made this possible. This song will always be my favourite boss theme in any Zelda, and for me, it was a very clear pick for my favourite song in Twilight Princess. To finish off, Twilight Princess was a very dark and atmospheric game. This allowed the composers to experiment more with ambience, and once again use the advantages of better hardware to create a much more complex soundtrack. This OST is likely my favourite from any Zelda game overall, as there's just so much depth to it. I believe that this is a soundtrack that truly made me understand how much of an impact the OST can have on the overall feeling of a game. It is also a perfect example on how ambience can be equally as effective as having a complex series of songs. I will continue to love and listen to this soundtrack regularly, as well as sing its praises as one of the best. What is your opinion on my top 10? Do you agree with me? Are any picks of mine the same as yours? Or is your list completely different? Please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, as it helps me grow and ensures that you won't miss my next video in the series. Top 10 songs in The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. A soundtrack that would take a new approach entirely. But that will be all for today. If you made it this far, type in the comments, Kaiiiba comes from the Twilight. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.